It took 92 years for this to happen again. And almost nobody told you. You feel it in your grocery bill. You feel it when your rent goes through the roof. You feel it when your credit card minimums jump, even though you did not buy anything crazy. Meanwhile, your social feed says the stock market is fine, unemployment is fine, the economy is fine. You are not crazy. Something deep in the plumbing of the money system just snapped in a way we have not seen since the early 1930s. And no, I'm not talking about 2008. Back then it was a housing bubble and toxic mortgages blowing up the banks. This time it is something quieter, something older, and honestly, something scarier. For the first time since the Great Depression, the broad money supply in the United States has actually started to shrink instead of grow. Economists call it M2. You do not need the fancy label. All you need to know is this. During the pandemic, the money supply exploded. Then, starting in late 2022 and 2023, it went into reverse. Year over year, the pile of money in the system actually went down by more than 2%, a move we had only seen in a handful of moments in the last century, including 1931 to 1933, at the depths of the Great Depression. That is the 92 years in the title. The last time this channel of money shrank like this, we got mass unemployment, bank failures, and a decade that scarred an entire generation. So why today does it still feel like business as usual on the surface? Quick pause before we go further. Nothing in this video is financial, investment, or tax advice. This is education and entertainment about how the money system works. I do not know your personal situation, your debts, your income, your family. You should always do your own research and talk with a qualified professional before making big decisions with your money. Alright, let's answer the big question. Why now? Why did it take almost a century for this weird combination to show up again? Think about the last 15 years like a 3-act play. Act 1 was after 2008. The central bank slammed interest rates down to almost zero. They flooded the system with cheap money. They bought government bonds and mortgage bonds. They rescued the big players. The message was simple. Do not worry. Money will always be easy. We will always step in. That easy money era lasted more than a decade. Act 2 was the pandemic. Governments shut down large parts of the real economy, then tried to replace real activity with printed money. Stimulus checks, rescue programs, emergency lending. The money supply, that M2 number, shot up at record speed. It was like strapping a rocket engine to an already over-leveraged system. Then comes Act 3. Inflation explodes. Grocery prices jump. Rents spike. Used cars cost as much as new cars. The central bank suddenly wakes up and goes, "Oh no, we broke it," and slams the brakes. In about a year and a half, the Federal Reserve pushed its main interest rate from around 0 to more than 5%, the fastest hiking cycle since the early 1980s. Short-term rates shot above long-term rates, creating an inverted yield curve that lasted for more than 2 years, roughly 780 days, the longest inversion in modern history. For most people, that phrase means nothing. So here is what it actually means for you. Normally, if you lend money for 10 years, you expect a higher rate than if you lend for 2 years. When the curve inverts, the 2-year pays more than the 10-year. The bond market is basically screaming, there is trouble ahead. And while that warning light was blinking red, the money supply started to fall. Not grow slower, actually fall. At the same time, rates on mortgages, credit cards, and auto loans stayed painfully high. More expensive money, less total money, highest rates in decades, longest yield curve inversion ever. That combo is not 2008. The last time we saw anything close was the Great Depression era. Now, before you panic, let's talk about how this feels where you live. Right now, on the ground. Because the pain is already here. It is just uneven. Credit card balances in the United States hit around $1.2 trillion by the end of 2024. That is a record. At the same time, serious credit card delinquencies and defaults have jumped to the highest levels since around 2010. Lenders wrote off tens of billions of dollars in bad card loans in 2024 alone, up roughly 50% from the previous year. Auto loans tell the same story. Delinquencies on car payments are up by roughly half compared with the early 2010s. Some reports show subprime auto loans, the riskiest ones, at their worst delinquency rates on record. People are paying more for cars, more for insurance, and falling behind faster. Now zoom out to housing. By 2023, roughly half of all renters in the United States were cost-burdened, meaning they spent more than 30% of their income just on keeping a roof over their head. For lower-income renters, the number is brutal. Many have 40%, even 50% of their pay going straight to rent and utilities. That leaves almost nothing for savings, almost nothing for emergencies, almost nothing for investing. So while the official story says the economy is growing and the job market is strong, the lived reality is a massive squeeze. Record consumer debt, rising delinquencies, rents that swallow paychecks, food and fuel taking bigger bites out of what is left. That is what a shrinking money supply with high rates feels like from your side of the table. Now let's talk about who did this, because there is a villain here. I'm not talking about one politician or one central banker. I'm talking about the machine. The machine is the loop between big banks, central banks, giant funds, and politicians. When things are calm, the machine wants you consuming, borrowing, and investing blindly. When things get messy, it quietly protects itself first and lets the pain roll downhill. During the easy money era, the machine told you, 0% interest, buy the house. 0 down, drive the car. Market only goes up, buy the dip. Inflation is transitory, relax. Then when inflation blew out, the machine did a 180. It raised rates at record speed. It let the money supply roll over. See, it made your credit card interest jump into the 20s, your mortgage rate double, your car payment explode. But it did not cut its own throat. Instead, it started stacking safe short-term government bills, paying fat yields. It rolled out money market funds for the wealthy. It used high rates and volatility as an excuse to push more fee products, more structured garbage, more complexity. And the biggest insider of them all, look at Warren Buffett's shop. Berkshire Hathaway now sits on a cash pile well above $300 billion, the largest war chest it has ever had. Buffett is not all in on speculative tech. He is sitting in short-term government bills and waiting. The machine wants you leveraged and distracted. Smart money is patient and liquid. So how do we know this moment is really different? By our, not just internet doom posting. That is where history comes in. Roll back to the late 1920s and early 1930s. In 1929, people thought they were living in a new era. Technology, radio, cars, consumer credit. Stocks had gone almost straight up for years. Everyone from barbers to shoeshine boys was buying on margin. Then the crash hit. Over the next few years, something worse happened than just falling stock prices. The money itself disappeared. Between 1929 and 1933, the money supply in the United States fell by almost 30%, not growth slowing down. The actual amount of money in the system collapsed. Thousands of banks failed. Roughly 1/4 of the workforce was unemployed. Prices fell, but debt stayed the same, which made every dollar of debt heavier. Why did it get so bad? Because the central bank of that time, the early Federal Reserve, did not step in fast enough. It let bank runs spread. It let the credit system crumble. It let the money supply shrink. Fast forward to now. We do not have bank runs on the corner in the same way, partly because of deposit insurance and emergency tools. But we do have something that rhymes. After printing money at record speed from 2020 to 2022, the central bank then slammed rates higher and began shrinking its own balance sheet. That sucked money out of the system. On top of that, commercial banks tightened lending standards. People got cut off from cheap credit. The overall money supply started falling at the fastest pace since the 1930s. And when you look back at history, there have only been a handful of times in the last roughly 150 years when the money supply fell more than about 2% year over year. 1878, 1893, 1921, 1931 to 1933. All of those periods were linked to deflationary depressions or very severe contractions. Now we are living through the 5th version of that pattern. So when someone tells you, relax, this is just like 2008, they are missing the point. 2008 was a credit bomb in one sector, housing, inside an expanding money supply era. What we are living through now is a slow motion squeeze inside a shrinking money world. It took more than 90 years for those conditions to line up again. That sounds terrifying. But here is the key idea I want you to hold on to. This only turns into your personal Great Depression if you walk into it naked. It becomes the biggest opportunity of your life only when you build your own little central bank at home. Read that again in your head. Only if you are naked. Only when you are prepared. So how do you actually do that? Let's pivot from fear to strategy. You do not control the money supply. You do not control interest rates. You do not control whether the yield curve inverts or not. But there are two massive levers you do control. First, your personal shock absorber. Second, your positioning when assets go on sale. Your personal shock absorber is the boring, unsexy stuff that the machine never advertises because nobody earns a commission from it. It is choosing to run a permanent gap between your lifestyle and your income. If you bring in $4,000 a month, you do not build a $4,000 lifestyle. You deliberately build a $3,000 lifestyle and protect that $1,000 as your buffer. It is building your own liquidity instead of depending on credit cards. That might look like 1 month of real expenses sitting in checking, then a few months in a simple savings account or government bill ladder. Not because the yield is amazing, but because cash is oxygen when the rest of the world is gasping. It is attacking toxic debt before it attacks you. High-interest credit cards, buy now, pay later traps, car loans that eat a third of your take-home pay. In a shrinking money world, the people who survive are the ones who owe the least to the system. It is tracking where your money actually goes, not in a complicated spreadsheet. Just a simple habit of knowing, this is what I spent on rent or on food, on transport, on nonsense. When you see the leaks, you can plug them. That is the prep side. Then comes the action side. This is where most people either get reckless or freeze. The reckless crowd sees fear and decides to gamble. Options, leverage, meme stocks, crypto coins with dog logos. They try to turn a few $100 into a miracle. That is exactly how the machine wants you to react. Panicked, emotional, chasing. The other crowd freezes completely. They hoard cash forever. They watch opportunities pass by and tell themselves they will wait until things feel safe. Here is the boring, powerful middle path. You accept that volatility is normal. You accept that markets overshoot both up and down. You accept that you, as one person, cannot outguess the timing of recessions or rate cuts. So instead of guessing, you pick simple, broad vehicles you understand and drip money into them on a schedule, not a feeling. That might be a low-cost broad stock fund. It might be a global mix. It might be a blend of growth and dividend ETFs. The exact mix is your homework, not something you copy from a stranger on the internet. The key is this: you let the macro chaos dictate your pace, not your presence. When valuations are crazy, you are happy to hold more cash and move slowly. When fear is everywhere, prices are beaten down, and you still have your job and your shock absorber, you quietly increase your buying. You become, in a small way, what Buffett is doing on a giant scale. You hold dry powder when the crowd is drunk. You act when the crowd is terrified. And you never, ever build your life on the assumption that money will stay cheap forever. Because if the last few years have taught us anything, it is this: the machine will flip the switch whenever it needs to protect itself. So here is my challenge to you. Look at your life like a little balance sheet. On one side, list your fixed obligations: rent or mortgage, car, debt payments, non-negotiable bills. On the other, list your buffers and assets: cash, savings, investments, skills you could turn into income if you had to. Ask yourself 2 questions. First, if my income got cut for 6 months, do I have any runway at all, or am I instantly on fire? Second, if markets dropped hard over the next few years, do I have even a small plan to take advantage of lower prices, or would I just watch and panic? If both answers feel bad, that does not mean you failed. It means you are early. You are seeing the system clearly while most people are still pretending nothing changed. It took 92 years for this combination of shrinking money, high rates and warning signals to show up again. You do not control that. But you do control whether you go into this decade as a victim of the machine, or as someone quietly building a position on the other side of it. If this helped you make sense of the weird feeling you have about the economy right now, share it with one person who is stressed but does not know why. The more ordinary people understand how the money game actually works, the less power the machine has. And remember, nothing in this video is financial, investment, or tax advice. It is general education and entertainment based on public information and my own opinions. I am not your financial advisor and I do not know your personal situation. You should always do your own research and make your own decisions.